G'day, mates. Australia, land of sunshine, shrimp on the barbie, and emu wars. You heard right. This ain't no joke. In 1932, the Australian Army declared war on emus. Yes, those big, flightless birds. Australia's history is full of unexpected turns. From convicts to gold rushes, it's a wild ride. But the Emu War, that's a story for the ages. Picture this. Soldiers with machine guns facing off against thousands of emus. It sounds like a scene from a wacky comedy, but it really happened. So buckle up, because we're about to dive headfirst into one of the most bizarre events in Australian history. Get ready to laugh, learn, and maybe even shake your head in disbelief. Why on earth would anyone declare war on emus, you ask? Well, picture this. It's the 1930s, the Great Depression is in full swing, and farmers are struggling. To make matters worse, a massive flock of emus, around 20,000 strong, decided to descend upon Western Australia. These weren't your average feathered friends. They were hungry, they were destructive, and they were everywhere. The emus trampled crops, tore down fences, and generally made life miserable for the farmers. Desperate times called for desperate measures, and the farmers appealed to the government for help. The government, perhaps feeling a bit bold, or maybe just a tad bonkers, decided the best course of action was war. And so the Great Emu War was born. The Emu War was... Now, you might think sending soldiers armed with Lewis machine guns against a bunch of birds is a bit overkill. And you wouldn't be wrong, but that's exactly what happened. In November 1932, Major GPW Meredith led a small contingent of soldiers into the Western Australian countryside, ready to take on the feathered foe. The soldiers, armed with their impressive weaponry, soon discovered that fighting emus wasn't as easy as it sounded. Emus, it turns out, are surprisingly good at dodging bullets. They're fast, they're agile, and they have this uncanny knack for making even the most skilled soldier look a bit silly. The first attempt at engaging the enemy was, well, a bit of a flop. The soldiers opened fire on a large flock of emus, only to find that the birds scattered in all directions, seemingly unharmed. The emus, it seemed, were winning the war. As the days turned into weeks, the soldiers continued their efforts to cull the emu population. They tried ambushes, they tried flanking maneuvers, they even tried chasing the emus into trucks. But the emus, it seemed, were always one step ahead. One politician famously declared, "These emus are like mobile machine gun nests." Major Meredith himself, sounding slightly exasperated, reported back to his superiors, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world. They can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks." The Great Emu War wasn't exactly a bloodbath. While some emus were killed, the army's efforts were largely ineffective. The emus, for their part, seemed completely unfazed by the whole affair. They continued to roam the countryside, pecking at crops and generally living their best emu lives. After several weeks of embarrassing defeats, the Australian government decided to call it quits. The soldiers retreated, defeated by a bunch of birds. The emus, victorious and probably a little bit smug, continued their reign of terror over the Western Australian countryside. The Great Emu War, despite its grand name, was a bit of a flop. It achieved very little, apart from providing endless amusement to anyone who hears the story. The emus, it seemed, had won, but was it really a victory for the emus, or was it all just a bit of harmless fun? Section 6. The Emu's Legacy. The Great Emu War might not have been a shining moment in Australian military history, but it certainly left its mark. The story of the emu's victory over the Australian army quickly spread, becoming a legendary tale of resilience and the absurdity of war. Today, the Emu War is remembered with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. It's a reminder that even the most well-equipped army can be defeated by a determined enemy, even if that enemy is a flightless bird. The emus themselves have become something of a national icon, a symbol of Australia's unique and often unpredictable wildlife. Section 7. Lessons learned. So, what lessons can we learn from the Great Emu War? Well, for starters, maybe don't underestimate the power of a determined emu. More importantly, the Emu War reminds us that sometimes the best course of action is to laugh at ourselves. The world is full of strange and wonderful events, and sometimes the best way to deal with them is with a healthy dose of humor. The Emu War might have been a military failure, but it's a victory for the power of laughter. Section 8, Beyond the Battlefield. The Emu War might be over, but the story of Australia's unusual history doesn't end there. From the bizarre to the downright unbelievable, Australia's past is full of fascinating tales waiting to be discovered. Ever heard of the Great Melbourne Toilet Paper Panic of 1973, or the time a group of penguins held up traffic on a Sydney highway? Australia, my friends, is a land of endless surprises. So if you're looking for a good laugh, a dose of history, or just a reminder that the world is a truly bizarre and wonderful place, then look no further than Australia.